here we Have A Bleedin Guess, the story of Hex Induction Hour. Hex Induction Hour, as I'm sure many people in this room knows, is one of the handful of greatest albums ever made by anyone in the world ever. So, without further ado, it is my honour to bring in here from the back with a huge principal cheer for Mr. Paul Hanley. Why, out of all the albums, you had a 5-year tenure within the group, why did you choose Hex to write about?
Well, there's a couple of answers. The first one is that I think it's the best album I played on. I think that's one answer. A lot of people cite it as the best album. To be honest, the overriding reason why I wrote this book is Selva and Isabel from Root said they were thinking about doing like a 33 and a third book about Hex.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in writing it? And my overriding thought was, well, I'm not letting any other bastard write it. That was the big one, because I thought if anyone can write, I mean, without being arrogant, I thought I had a handle on how to write a book about it.
Yeah.
So, but I think it is the best album I played on. I think of any album I've played on.
Sure.
There's something about Hex which is above and beyond. I think mainly because Mark had a real vision for the album, I think. And once you get into it, and a lot of it wasn't even apparent to me before I started writing the book, but once you start looking into it, everything sort of fits together. The title, the length of the album, the lyrics sort of cross over, there's themes and all that kind of thing, and overriding arches across the whole thing. It's a very clever album, which I get a lot of which passed me by at the time.
Sure, because I mean, did you know you were making an album because you started the tracks in Iceland? Did you set out to make this is the next time for an album, or?
Well, not the ones in Iceland. I don't think we actually knew what was going to be. Once we went to Hitchin, then that was kind of a plan. This was going to be an album now, and we knew that the two songs. Well, we had 3 in Iceland, but one of them we didn't use. But they knew that those were going on it. So by the time we got to Hitchin, there was a vision for the album. Yeah, definitely.
So the book, you start, let's go back to the beginning. In 1980, you come into the group,
yeah.
And what's his name, the old rockabilly drummer?
Mike
Lee. Oh, he's fabulous Tash. Probably the only Tash.
He did have a lovely Is he the only Tash?
Only Tash in the 4? Someone could probably tell us that.
All the later guys.
There's a Tash graph somewhere on Busy.com.
I think towards the end there might have been a few. Everybody had a Tash in the beard in them days, didn't they?
Yeah.
Still do.
So he was there, and that was fabulous. But he decided to leave, and he was moved out.
He was like a cabaret drummer, Mike, before the fall, and he Rockin' Ricky and the I can't remember now. Anyway,
Velvet Collars.
Thank you very much. Rockin' Ricky and the Velvet. Edit that bit out. And I think Mark got him in really just to piss people off because he could not have been any more different to Carl. If you'd set out to try and build a drummer the polar opposite of Carl Burns, then Mike Lee is what you would have come up with.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a weird one because I was at his first gig, Mike Lee. It was at a place called Bowden Vale. It was like a working men's club in Bowden, funnily enough, which is very near to where I live now.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa. It was, I mean, when he tried to play the Carl songs, it was like, whoa, what's this? And then he did a couple of the new ones, and that was all right. But because I was the world's biggest Carl Burns fan, and I was watching that, I was thinking, what's he doing to Carl's songs? He can't play them. But once they started writing new stuff, which they did with alarming speed, I think, by the time he got to Dragnet, he kind of fit in there.
Sure.
But he left because they weren't doing enough gigs. They only did 130 gigs in a year, so that wasn't enough for him. So he went back to cabaret, which I think he regretted fairly quickly, in fairly short order, I think.
Sure. So you came in, was it a permanent thing, or did you just come in to fit
I came in to do the one gig. They had one gig left. I think Mike said he was leaving, and I think Kay said, well, you're not doing the London gig. They let him do one more, and then they got me in again just to piss Carl off. I think to Mike off. They got me in like 16-year-old to do the gig in London, which was with the Cramps. Electric Ballroom, big venue.
Sure.
Would have been one of the biggest ones Mike had ever done, I think. And he wanted to do it, so they got me in, and then I did that, and then I had to audition, which was charming. My brother's in the band. Oh, you've not got the gig yet, mate? Oh no. It was me and Andy Zero. Andy Zero was he ran a fanzine called City Fun.
Right.
In Manchester, and it was like the City Fun was like the Manchester fanzine thing. So they got him in to audition, and I passed, so I got the gig. So,
and how was it that sort of thing? You were in a room, and the rest of them were all standing there facing you, and you were.
No, we did it on 2 separate days. They weren't that bad. It wasn't X Factor.
Right.
No, they rehearsed with me, and then I was.
So you actually
clearly much better than I deserved.
You played with them. You didn't sort of do a Ginger Baker solo. Or
no. I didn't do told or anything. No.
You were straight.
I tell you what, the song that got me in was they did New Puritan. New Puritan had been on a sort of an album which is half live and half mostly live. Yeah, it was on that, but that was recorded in Mark's bedroom.
Yeah.
So they played that, and apparently Mike had never been able to put drums to it, and they did play that, and I put some drums to it.
Right.
So then Mark said, "Oh, that's brilliant. That I need you to write a drum intro for that song, and we'll do it at the Pale session." So that was what got me the job. Got the stool, if you like.
And you were in from that Peel session. That was the first.
No, we did. It was a bit later. We did a fair few gigs, and then we did some recording from. We did a couple of singles. I Wrote Elastic Man. I'm not sure the order, to be honest. We did I Wrote Elastic Man and Totally Wired, but I'm not sure where the Peel session fits into that. But it was fairly short order.
And then into Grotesque, which is sort of like for a lot of people is seen as the first sort of classic Fall album.
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure. I think Dragnet might be, but Dragnet's a strange album.
Oh yeah.
Again, it's that thing of I'm going to make something that's nothing like Live at the Witch Trials. You can see Mark's workings. You can see if you look at it. He did Live at the Witch Trials, which was like brilliant musicians, which is one thing Mark Riley says in the book. By the time we got to Dragnet, that was Mark's idea. For all these sort of fragile musicians who weren't slick or in any way. Not that they were particularly slick, but they were very talented musicians, Martin and Carl particularly.
Yeah, of course.
So by the time we got to Dragnet, he had these people that he brought in as young lads who would. Basic idea was they didn't want to be flash musicians, they just wanted to do what Mark wanted, really, if you know what I mean. And that was even the same for me as well. I think someone at 16, they're not going to start bossing you around, are they? Let's face it. Well, I wasn't.
I mean, the Grotesque, with things like Container Drivers, NWRA, it sort of like set the real sort of template for that next phase of what was going to happen. And then you went to America, so that was the next.
I didn't go.
No, you didn't go. So that's how Carl came back and worked out that legacy. Yes. So what did you feel at that moment? Was it like, I've lost this precious gig that I really wanted, or?
I don't think I ever thought that they weren't going to get me back.
Right.
It was stipulated at the time. No, it's only temporary. We're only getting Carl in to do this tour. And I think, to be fair, when they got Carl in, that was Mark and everyone thought, we'll just get Carl to do this tour. But then, if you've ever been in a band with Carl Burns, you're not going to want to let him go, because he was just the best drummer in the world, And even when they came back and said, "We'll have both," I was, I'd love to be in a band with Carl Burns. So I was never that insecure about it. I possibly should have been. Might have been a bit naive.
Yeah.
But I always thought they were going to get me back in.
Sure.
The only time I thought I was a bit in trouble was when we went to Iceland, and Mark was not best pleased with the way I played, mainly because I was massively hungover the whole time we were there.
So. We'll talk about Carl in a moment. The whole Iceland thing, Iceland now is on everyone's sort of holiday plan, and having a sit in that lagoon near the airport and all of that. But when you went, I remember reading in the papers like, Iceland, Jesus, are you going to be all right? Are you going to come back? But it really was like that.
Yeah.
How Einar, what's his name? Einar, who's
Einar Horn,
Einar Horn, yeah.
He got basically deliberately bumped into Kay at Rough Trade and said, "I'd like to put you on." I presume he thought she was going to say, "Don't be so ridiculous. Who the hell are you?" But she said, "Oh yeah, all right. If you can get it together, we'll come." And we did it, and it was brilliant. It was a fantastic experience. But there'd been a few bands been.
Stranglers had been.
Led Zeppelin had been. You were talking about a few bands. There'd been like 5 since 1965. But Any Trouble had been. Remember them?
Oh yeah. Blimey.
The Netto, Elvis Costello, and the Attractions.
Yeah.
They'd been.
Although he went on to be
Did he?
He did.
Well, you have to tell me what you know is.
Well, no, he did. No, he became one of those sort of characters. He carried on. But anyway, let's go back. So, and Mark said the studio was like an igloo.
It was. Again, Mark put out this kind of false story. The album was recorded in a lava pit and an abandoned cinema.
Yeah.
But that was by far and away the plushest studio any of us had ever been in. That one in Iceland, because let's face it. They didn't have 10 or 12 studios in Iceland, there was one, so they recorded orchestras in there, they recorded big bands, they recorded everything. It was a big plush studio, big Steinway piano. It was lovely, really lovely place to go in. Björk's did all their early recording.
Yeah. And they did like Polish, Icelandic
Yeah, they did all that. Yeah, all that.
poetry,
Any
and
rock
all
and
that.
roll, anything was all done in this one studio. It was the oldest studio in Iceland. And they had an English engineer who'd worked with like the Philharmonic. He did recorded a live album with Neil Sedaka, funnily enough, with an orchestra and everything, yeah.
Because one of the great things about this book is that's one of the footnotes, and if you have seen this book or if you're going to buy it, the footnotes are almost as good as the interviews.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I'm sick of people saying the footnotes are better than the book.
Oh, no, not better.
That's a bit defeating the purpose, really, isn't it?
But I mean, there's the detail, and about that man. In fact, you are saying the Netto obviously still own the attractions.
All right. I've just made that up on the cuff. It's not in the book.
But no, there is that fabulous thing that you say about the engineer.
Yeah, he was massively underimpressed with the fall.
Yes,
he was. Yeah. I mean, why would he be? You know, why would he be impressed with the fall? It was just another bloody scruffy English band coming in.
So the 3 songs which you did, I mean, one of them has taken on this sort of almost separate life from the Fall as probably the most key song. But we'll come back to that. But Iceland, I mean, that was a song that Mark, he wasn't delighted with your playing on, as you say in the book.
He wasn't at the time. No, that was when we came back. It was one of the things he had a real go at me for it, because they did this song and it was, you know, obviously with the Fall were guitar, drums. Mark was either guitar or keyboards. Steve played the bass, and they came up with this song and it was grand piano, and Mark was playing a banjo. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do on this? I haven't got a clue. And I made the mistake of articulating my insecurity in front of Mark, and he sort of latched onto it, you know.
Right.
So, but I mean, I think the drums are great on it, to be honest. I think it's fine as far as I'm concerned. But that was, I shouldn't have done it. If I'd have just kept stum and said I was thinking about it, he wouldn't have latched onto it. But, you know.
Look No was also recorded there, and that's always been a sort of very problematic song.
Yeah, he left it off. You know about that. He left it off, didn't he? A couple of compilations. I don't think he liked it very much.
No.
Because, well, Mark had a bit of a lead, but Mark Riley had a bit of a lead vocal on it. That was one reason that they pissed Mark off a bit. But I don't know, I think he thought it was a bit slight, I think. It was just a sort of having a go at the members of the band and having a go at having a go at himself, really. I don't think he wasn't a grand vision or anything. It was just one of them songs. And Steve was never happy with it either. He wrote the music and he was never happy with it either, I don't think.
But in terms of a grand vision, I mean, Hit Priest is just, you know...
It is, yeah. I mean, it was the old... I mean, if you take Hit Priest and Big Priest, which are essentially the same level, that was one of the mainstays of the Fall for, what, 30 years or something, I think. He only stopped playing it once he got the band in that lasted 10 years at the end. Maybe he felt appreciated by then, I think. That's probably it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been playing that live, as with most of the material.
We had, yeah. We played that live the day we wrote it, weirdly. And it's on video as well, because nothing was on video then. You know, you got there's like 3 or 4 in the first couple of years of tiny little bits of video, but that whole gig was recorded. And we did Hit Priest, we played it in the sound check twice, maybe. And we did it that night, and it's on video, which is really strange. It's like there's just nothing really. It's just the drums and a bit of noodling about. But you can see where it's going to. Eventually, it could have turned into a great song, which it did, I think.
And I mean, one of the great things in the book is you've got sort of each song has its sort of label copy, if you will, there by it, and you've been at pains to go to the PRS.
I have, yeah. It's not that difficult, you know.
No.
But it's just, I think there's an interesting contrast between sometimes what's on the label. Well, there's 3 different things really. There's what's on the label, what you registered with the PRS, which is obviously what people get paid, and who actually wrote it. And sometimes, never whatever the one up from Twain is, they don't meet. They're not the same.
Sure.
The songs that are credited to some people, like I mentioned in one of the footnotes there, Wings, which is quite possibly one of Craig's best songs / riffs. He don't get credit on it. It's credited to singing.
And I mean, Mark's incredibly arbitrary way with credits. I mean,
incredibly, yeah.
That was just.
It was just nobody said anything though. The weird thing about that is nobody ever said, "Hang on, I wrote that," you know.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way it is.
Well, that's always what struck me as sort of strange.
It's bonkers, isn't it?
That if you'd written it.
But that's the thing Steve always says. Steve always says you're like the frog in the saucepan of water being heated up. If you're inside, you just let it happen. Sure. When you step out and look and think, why didn't I say, hang on a minute, I wrote that?
Sure.
Well, no one ever did, I don't think.
No, you said, this is important from the Performing Rights Society, who actually gets paid. For comparison, I've included the credits as printed on the label, the original vinyl, in brackets.
Yeah.
And I think that's, as Craig points out, he left us a great legacy of arguing. He'd be laughing his head off.
He would be, yeah. He'd be down there now looking up at us, laughing.
I mean, I don't know how. I mean, so many people try and describe Mark and working with Mark.
Yeah.
You've been asked countless times.
I don't think I'm really that qualified, really. It's like, without being flippant, it's like, what was that boss you used to work for? You worked at the firm in 1985.
Yeah.
Well, it was, I can't really remember, I mean, obviously you get a bit more. You've got a few more memoirs with all the records and everything. But he was my boss. I think we had a very healthy relationship, me and Mark. Really, he was a similar relationship to the people that were in the last 10 years. He was my boss, and I worked for him. And to the best of my ability, I did what he wanted. And bosses are always a bit unreasonable.
Sure.
It kind of goes in. I've had unreasonable bosses in every job I've ever had. I've had some great bosses as well. But it wasn't. I had no expectations to be his mate. I think it got a bit more messy with Steve, because Steve was in the band 20 years, and that was when it gets to the point where one day he's your mate, one day he's your boss, and one day he can't stand you.
Yeah. That's
when it gets a bit difficult, I think. But I think, to be fair, by the time Steve was leaving, everybody was in a bit of a bad place, I think. So, but Mark turned it around, and he, good luck to him. Steve always thought, he'd be finished when he left. Not because he'd left, just because of where Mark was at that point. And I think Mark would have acknowledged himself he was in a pretty bad place. But he got it back and he put the fall on an even keel, and you've got to give him that.
He was the mill owner and you were his boys.
Yeah.
Gave the wage packet.
He loved
Do you think that was a fair...
He loved that.
He played up to that.
He did play up to that, yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite that, to be fair. I mean, if he was the mill owner, we weren't just working on there, we were building the looms as well, to be fair. If I can stretch this analogy to a tortuous degree.
You can bring in a spinning Jenny in a moment, maybe, as we're here. So the relationship you have with ideas, so in the studio, say we stay in Iceland now and then we're going to move to Hitchin, so you would all throw in an idea, or Mark would obviously come in with a lyric.
It was that, because all we had was ideas. Nobody was articulate enough to write anything down, or even articulate enough to tell people really what they wanted. Nobody in the fall at that time had any kind of musical language at all. They couldn't talk about keys, or they couldn't talk about, bars. Seriously, none of us knew what a bar was. Well, they know how to alter the bar, or what key it's in. Nobody knew. Nobody had that language. And again, you don't realise how unusual that is until you're in bands with other people and they start saying, it starts off in the key of A and then the middle, and we didn't know what middle 8 was. Middle 8 was the bit in the middle that was different from everything else. Didn't know that 8 meant 8 bars or any of that nonsense. We didn't have a clue. So it was all just this really tentative, fragile, I've got this idea, and it works. And it just did, I mean, obviously that's why The Fall was a good band. It was just, I don't know if luck's the right word, but we didn't really just throw enough shit at a wall and enough at the sticks. I think that was basically it, because we didn't have a clue really. I'd never had a drum lesson in my life, and Steve's never had a musical lesson in his life, or Mark, or Craig. You didn't talk to Craig about chords. It'd be, I put this finger here and this one. What chord's that? No idea. It looks a bit like a goat kneeling down. I don't know what it's called. But that was the whole thing. There was no musical knowledge at all. It was, I think, the first person to get in who was really, I mean, Martin and Carl were proper musicians, but not taught musicians. They weren't writing sheet music or anything like that. But I think Simon Rogers was the first who could actually write it down. That was I remember that when we joined the Lovers with Tom Engley, and we got Jason in, who's a proper, he taught music, and Steve said, "Not sure I trust this guy. Every riff he plays has got a name." So because he could articulate what he was doing and write it down as music.
Sure.
It was completely alien to us.
And I mean, I think that's what makes certainly that era of the Fall so absolutely unique, because no one else could make that sound. There were a lot of bands that were similar, and it was but you listen now to sort of Joy Division next to you, and Joy Division sound like Queen almost. They're very well played. Whether how
that's true. Yeah, because obviously George and him were all self-taught as well. But there's a musicality there that isn't there present in the Fall sometimes, is it? If you listen to some of it, you think, hang on a minute, this guy doesn't know. He doesn't even control of his hands. It was, there's some of that stuff on Dragnet. You think, hang on, that's completely out of tune. You've got four musicians here. Why is none of them picked up on the fact?
Sure.
And I don't know whether it was deliberate or whether it was not. I mean, some people thought it was deliberate. I know that for a fact because I remember the fire engine said, we've gone for that sound where you deliberately tune one guitar down and one guitar slightly sharp, and it gives you that kind of tension that you get. But nobody, as soon as the Fall got a tuner, that was it. It never happened again, funnily enough.
when was that? Can you remember that day? Can you remember?
Craig told me that. They played Future Armour Festival in Leeds in 1979, and Craig was tuning his guitar with pitch pipes in this bloody and Will Sardi said, "What the fuck are you doing there? Have you not got a tuner?" But in a Scouse accent. And he showed him an electronic tuner, and none of them had seen it. It was like, what the hell is this? You got this from another planet. That was the first time they'd ever come across one. Yeah.
Amazing. No, absolutely amazing. So you'd done those three, and now it was time to sort of make the album. Richard Mazda was producing you.
Yes.
And you'd worked with him on Line Dream.
That's right, yeah.
Which was a tremendous... I mean, that was probably, for me, the first sort of professional sounding.
That's what he said. Richard Mazda, when I talked to him, he said he listened to Fall records and he thought there's no bottom end on this at all. They all sound like they're being played in a barn somewhere. So that was what he was... I think that was what he was brought in to do, deliberately by Mark, to give it a... Because he'd done no production at all on Dragnet. He'd done a kind of... By the time he got to Slates, he was bringing some kind of ideas of production in with Adrian Sherwood. Grant was getting a lot more. But then by the time we got to... he wanted a proper producer, I think. I think he really wanted to piss Rough Trade off, I think
there's that great quote, because Jeff Travis was named as the producer on Grotesque, and he said, I think a gnat or a mosquito could produce a full record if it was lucky enough to be in the studio at the time.
He was just in the room at the time, I think.
He said he didn't even know how to turn a stereo on when he became a producer. So when you heard Line Dream and that wonderful drum sound at the beginning,
I was really delighted with that,
It was so
it was Carl and not me. I wrote that bloody drum part and they gave it to Carl. Oh, it was made up. Like, God, that sounds fantastic, doesn't it? I did the hand claps. The hand claps are good though, weren't they?
Honestly, it's probably...
They're the best bit.
I would say it's the first Flawless Fall single.
I think so.
It's that love that everything was right.
It is. It's a brilliant single, and the lyrics are great, and it's properly arranged and bedded in, and everybody knew it, and it's great. A great single. Frustratingly.
So that spirit. I mean, when you think, I mean, whenever I think of Hex, there's only one track that comes out, and it's the legendary side one, track one, and just that assault of noise that happens. And if now I had, like this morning, my phone connection, I would now play very loudly the classical to you. First of all, you were in this famous disused, except it wasn't a disused cinema in Hitchin. How on earth did you get to Hitchin? It's not rock and roll.
How did we get to Hitchin? We didn't hitch.
Hitching a ride.
It was Richard Masters' idea, I think.
Right.
Because we did Live Dream in a place called I want to say the Townhouse. I think it was a studio in London.
Oh right, yeah.
And so we did that, and he couldn't get that because that had a big stone room. With drums in. It sounded great.
Well, that was the room where Peter Gabriel did.
No, it wasn't actually. No, it wasn't.
Right.
It was the studio was a copy of the one.
Oh right. The workhouse?
Yes, that's
right.
Yeah, the workhouse, not the townhouse, The workhouse was like, I can't remember what the band was. But anyway, they had a band, and they tried to make it as much like the workhouse.
Right.
Or the other way. One house. But anyway, we were in there, we couldn't get that for the album, so Richard suggested this place in Hitchin because it was a venue with a studio upstairs that you could run the mics down to the stage. So they used it for in concert. BBC did a few in concert with like Thin Lizzy and Fun Boy 3. And things, so it was ideal for a band with two drummers really, because you're trying to capture a performance rather than go back and overdub a lot of stuff. So it worked out really well because we did the ones that, if you look at like Deer Park, they're not really a song.
No.
without the performance, really. You couldn't. You're not rocking up and doing that on a karaoke with an acoustic guitar or anything. Are you?
I've tried.
Yeah. It's just without the six of us playing. It's not really a song at all.
Yeah.
And there's a few like that on that album. I mean, on this day, you're not whistling that. That's true. So we did all those ones on the stage, and then we could move up to the studio and do the others.
Right.
Now, but the way the album's sequenced is kind of disguises that.
Yeah.
So nobody really picked up on the fact. Everyone said, "Oh, it's live performance. It's in a disused cinema," but it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not even close to being true, really. It's a nice story, but it's not true at all. Some of the stuff, like if you look at Winter, you couldn't do that live because he took the drums and bass off, kept the guitars and the keyboards, and then had Carl and Steve play along with the track afterwards without a click track. So they just had to try and keep up to this, and it was just impossible. If you listen to it, it just sounds. They sort of keep it together the first half, which is the end of side one. By the end of side two, the bass and drums are sort of drifting away from the rest of the song, and it's just and it's really clever. And it's really clever. Everybody, Mark said that's what we're going to do, and everybody said that is the worst idea. It's going to sound dreadful, but it does kind of fits with the lyric. This kind of thing where you're talking about the everyday, but it's not really everyday. It's kind of not quite. You're looking at something. You think this. He's describing a person, but it's not a real person, and whether the kid's possessed or not. But it's just not quite right, and the music isn't quite right either. I mean, that's really clever. I think. Certainly wouldn't have occurred to me.
Do you think some were just absolute flukes, or he was considering?
No, maybe some of them were flukes, and I don't think anybody would say something isn't valid because it was just by chance. I mean, if you look at any band, there's lots of things where it's just by chance.
Of course.
Like Long by the Beatles, where he plays the last note, the wine bottle starts vibrating. I mean, that was by chance, but you wouldn't say that isn't absolutely key to the song. So I think it's wrong to discard that kind of thing. But no, there was a few by chance. I mean, to be fair, if he comes out with 1 million mad ideas and 500,000 of them are bonkers and really, really bad ideas, then you've still got 500,000. You've still got 250,000 good ideas there, haven't you?
Sure.
So that was the way it worked, I think.
So the classical, just that noise. I mean, the two of you working together there. I mean, it's just that beginning and the way. I mean, how did you work your parts out? Do you say you're going to play the beat and I'm going to do the sort of tom bit?
We kind of approached it like a rhythm and a lead guitarist, really.
Right.
One would be the rhythm guitarist and one would be the lead drummer, if you like. And it was usually Carl who was the lead because he was bigger than me and more intimidating than me. But not always. But certainly the classical, I was like sort of playing the beat and he was doing whatever the hell Carl does, really. And the drumming, his drumming on that's just. And I just stand there or sit there playing open mouth looking at Carl and just this is there's a film of us playing Garden at the Hacienda and there's just a bit where we look at each other and it's my Brokeback Mountain moment, I think. Bromance, where we both look at each other and we do this massive drum roll, and that just to be in a band with Carl was just fantastic. I mean, he was nuts in a lot of ways, but then everybody was nuts on him.
I mean, everybody talks about Carl with such affection.
Yes.
From every member of the Fall I've spoken to about Carl, it's all the same thing. I mean, completely.
I'm not sure. Brix talks about him with such affection.
Oh no, she does. Mongo.
Oh yeah, always a term of endearment, that isn't it?
Yeah. Well, from what's it, wasn't it? Blazing Saddles, and but the fact he was this sort of mediator with Mark.
He was a double agent. Yeah, but I think that was one of the reasons Mark brought him, because we were a bit of a gang by then. Me, Steve, Craig and Mark Raleigh, because they were obviously school friends and I was the little brother, so he didn't like that, I don't think. The Jesuits, he used to call us, because we're all Catholics, but and Irish. Yeah. So Mick Slimus is the other one as well, but he didn't like that. So he had Dave Tucker, who was a guy, lovely guy, and he played clarinet and did a bit of backing vocals and stuff. And he was kind of Mark's sort of, assistant, who then sort of hung around with the band a bit, but he didn't really gel with the rest of them. He was a nice guy, but once Carl came back, Dave was gone. But Carl was good at being all things to all men, really. He was just a force of nature, really, I think.
And that sort of extreme unpredictability he would have.
Yes, yeah. Steve was, but I don't think it was quite. By the time they got to playing together after the Fall, I think that unpredictability was just a bit of a liability. But with the Fall, because one of the other good things, if you've got two drummers, you can afford to lose one for a bit. You know, when we went to Australia, Carl, well, it depends who you ask. According to some, his passport was stolen by an irate ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
And according to some, his passport was eaten by his dog. So maybe he's a right ex-girlfriend's dog, I don't know, but he didn't come for the first week or something.
That's right, he joined you over there, didn't he?
So that suited Carl as well, I think. You know, always have a spare drummer on hand.
Sure. And I mean, the thing is, and the box set that not Sanctuary anymore, Cherry Red have just put together is 1982. We talked about how to frame the whole thing, because that year was so sort of key in the Falls.
It was, yeah. Well, it was key in that early bit of the fall. I mean, obviously, there was
there were many,
hell of a lot of fall after.
No, absolutely. But I think in that terms where, you know, by the end of the year, Mark Riley was out, which was always sort of the seismic shift. Bricks had been met and had come in. You know,
well, I think there was a bit in the middle there which was really interesting when we did Perverted by Language, where Craig was the only person playing any kind of melody at all. That was a really interesting period. Didn't really last long enough for me.
It was like, later.
You know, stuff like Smile and Garden, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, where everything's Craig really. I thought there was some really interesting stuff there as well, but then obviously Bricks came in, it kind of went off in a different direction.
Sure.
But that was one of the things Mark was very clever at, was saying, we've done enough of that.
Yeah.
Let's do something else.
And, you know, when you listen to Hex, the variants, you know, you've got Jawbone, which had been around for a couple of years. You know, and Just Step Sideways, you've got these sort of lighter trifles musically, except lyrically they're certainly not, but against the sort of denseness, you know, between the classical and Hip Priest. You know, Jawbone is still, I think, one of Mark's best lyrics.
I think it's a great lyric, that, because it's when he's sort of, when he tells the story. It's the first, maybe not the first time, it's probably the first time where he just tells the story. He doesn't turn back into Mark Smith and go off on a tangent halfway through, which he did like the NWRA. Starts off telling this story, and then by the end, but Jawbone and the air rifle is, I mean, it's just, you know, it's an episode of the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
And it's really clever, and you know, I didn't realise how clever it was just without looking at it, because one of the things, I don't know any more about Mark's lyrics than anybody else. He never discussed his lyrics with members of the band.
I was going to say, you know, when they came in, it was just
none of your business.
Right.
It was his attitude to lyrics, which is probably true enough. You know, when none of us wanted to either, really. None of us wanted to dissect them. You know, we all enjoyed Mark's lyrics. I mean, you couldn't not. You know, you turn up and it's got entrances uncovered, street sign you never saw, and stuff like that. And you think, this is just brilliant. I didn't really want to explain that to me, and not that I'm sure he could half the time either, because that wasn't the way he wrote lyrics, you know. It was but we never discussed any of it. We didn't discuss how we wrote music either, so we certainly weren't going to discuss how Mark wrote words.
And I mean, it was fascinating seeing you on stage at that time, and then sort of afterwards, where it was just like you'd gone to work. You know, you were there, and your head was down, and you were playing.
Definitely.
And Mark, you know, could bring in any form of disruption he liked, but you were...
Yes, that was one of the things I said. One of the key roles of people in the Fall was to try and realise Mark's vision, and one of the big jobs about realising Mark's vision was to ignore the fact that he didn't think you were up to it. You know, that was basically it, because he didn't. You know, a lot of the time, you know, he didn't like it. That was his kind of dichotomy with Mark. That was his problem, but he didn't like musicians, but he was forced into a life where he had to hang around with musicians all the time, you know. Which probably explains why he was so grumpy, you know. That's what Craig says about On This Day, you know. He's moaning about something, probably have to hang around with us five for 2 weeks while we're recording. That was probably what he's moaning about. He could be moaning about anything, but he didn't particularly rate musicians as on his level, which, you know, probably weren't. I certainly wasn't on his intellectual level at all. I was a 16-year-old kid, you know. But so he was kind of stuck with us, but it's just, you know, we did our best, and we did. You know, if you did a gig, it wasn't, did you enjoy that? And then you'd start thinking, well, enjoy is probably the wrong word, really. I got a lot of tremendous satisfaction out of it, but it wasn't fun a lot of the time. We weren't there to have fun, you know. To the point where we didn't really fit in with other bands. When we thought it was a bit weird, really, other bands were just about having fun. You think, oh, hang on, you've got a gig to do, you know. We were a bit puritanical in that way, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was no, you say the experience, you went through it, but you didn't, you know, there was no Hello Cleveland.
No, none of that. And I was always a bit disappointed with Hookie's books in that way. Because I loved New Order, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was, you know, you'd see, this is the best band in the world, and they're going on, and they're just getting off the cake and, you know, like playing crap gigs, and you think, well, why be in a band? You might can stay at home and do that.
Sure.
But, you know, the responsibility that the gig was, the important bit of the day was the gig.
Yeah.
Really. And everything else was just a pain in the arse, and still is, if I'm in a, to be honest, if I'm in a band now, all the stuff around the gig, it's a pain in the arse, you know, and it was not about getting trashed or anything else, you know. Not that people didn't get trashed,
of course.
There was, it was an important thing playing a gig in the fall.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you know.
But I think that's why, you know, I'm sure you encounter lots of people. It's almost like that code word between Fall fans about how many times they saw you, in whatever incarnation.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a sort of, you know, oh, I saw you 32 times, I saw you 50 times. You know, it's almost like that badge of honour because of the experience. It wasn't like, you know, you're now going to do blue suede shoes and
no, that's right,
fuck off. You're going to. It was almost like a pact between the audience and the band. That,
you're not coming here to see our greatest hits, you know.
Yeah.
Which was, you know, none of us wanted that. And Mark E. Smith said that about Mark, that he just wanted to play the hits, and it was nonsense. None of us wanted to rest on our laurels at all. We wouldn't have been in the Fall, you know. That was, you know, the Fall were doing that before I was in the band. They were, you know. When I joined the band, there was the first gig I played with the Fall, 5 songs I'd never heard before. Steve and Mark Riley played them in our shed on the Tuesday before the gig or whatever it was. I'd never heard them. The first time I heard those 5 songs with lyrics was on stage.
Yeah.
And not in the sound check either. We didn't do them in the sound check. We did 2 songs in the sound check, which I already knew. But so none of us was interested in, what I'm doing, you know, let's do No Christmas or whatever, you know, or let's play It's the New Thing. We wanted to move forward, and like I say, we wanted to realise Mark's vision, and the fact that he didn't believe that we did, it's neither here nor there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Come back to classical briefly, but you know, the opening lines are very controversial, very debatable. You know, allegedly cost the Motown contract, and I love the way you sort of go into some of these myths, like the disused cinema or whatever, and get as many different views as possible. I mean, was that when you were asked to do the book? Is that when you thought, right, this is how I want to?
Well, I wanted to give the proper. I didn't want to particularly shine daylight on the magic. That wasn't the kind of thing. It wasn't to say, no, it wasn't like that. It was all work and it was no inspiration. You know. But I think it doesn't diminish the story to tell what actually happened. You know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it doesn't diminish Mark saying we did this, this, and this. It's, you know, you're faced with the truth and the legend. Print the legend. Well, we've had the legend. There's nothing left now but the truth. I don't think. You know. Because, you know, that's it. Mark's talked about these albums, you know, and we've moved. But if you're going to write about Enduction now, you might as well set the story straight. I think you might as well tell what actually happened.
Sure. And also, what fascinates you know, you've written about the instruments you played, which is probably the least Fall thing ever. I always remember there was that thing in Melody Maker where people used to write and say, can you tell me Pink Floyd's equipment, please? And they'd all list it out.
Well, that's kind of a joke thing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure where he got that symbol. I know it was second hand. You know, it was like that Future Armour guitar, that Hagstrom Future Armour that Craig had. There's a picture of David Bowie playing one, or it might even be a video when he's doing Rebel Rebel. He's got the eye patch on.
Oh yeah.
Lovely sort of light red guitar, and it's got all these switches on the top. Craig got one. He bought it for £25 from A1 Repairs in Manchester, and he painted it with black gloss paint. He didn't even take the fretboard off. And he chopped the end off to make it easier to play with the left hand. He just didn't give a toss.
Yeah.
Nobody was in any way precious about the instruments at all. Nobody was like, because you see, I mean, even, you know, Steve Trafford and Jason, who I'm in the band with now, they're like kind of fetishistic about gears, you know. And it's like, I've got this pedal, I've got that, and I've got this amp. You know, it always amazes me. He's got this. Jason's got this Marshall stack, you know,
right,
and then he's got about 35 pedals, and you could have it in a bloody transistor radio with all these pedals, you know. But it becomes a very important thing, you know, and they change guitars between songs, and I think, hang on a minute, you're going through an amp into 35 pedals and then into a PA. Does anybody really discern the difference between those 2 guitars you're playing? But they're not as bad as some people, you know. You see,
of course.
If you look at the Edge, he changes the guitar every 3 minutes, you know, and he's got 58 million effects on it. He could be playing a bloody banjo for what the sound makes. But there was none of that.
No.
At all. It was to the point of, we took it a bit too far, I think, you know. It was like, basically playing crap, you know. That drum kit was one up from Chad Valley, really.
Yeah. I mean, and it sounded it as well.
Yeah.
Well, no, in a nice way, obviously. Hey, we all have a bit of chat about it.
The only thing that ever made me want to upgrade my drums at any point is it was falling to bloody pieces, you know. You just think, I'll tell you what do you want from a drum kit? And it wasn't like, well, I like this kind of wood and I like this kind of veneer and I was like, give me one with legs that stand up and don't fall to pieces, really. Because that was it, you're playing like 100 gigs a year.
Yeah.
The only thing was that the hardware was enough to put up with it, really.
Sure.
Especially when you're doing gigs and the two support, well, can we use your kit? You end up with a box of firewood by the end of 12 days. But, so I've still to this day, neither Steve, to be honest. Steve's had the same bass gear for the last 30 years, maybe.
Sure.
I think. And he's no interest in changing it. Well, why would you?
Sure.
It makes him sound like him. That's all you want.
Yeah. Well, I was talking about Bernard Edwards this morning, and he had the same.
What strings do you?
Yeah.
What do you get free with the guitar?
Exactly, the ones that came with it. And I mean, so busting that myth, because the noise you made from that rudimentary implement, and that's why it's so funny in the book to read, everyone doing it while they were playing is sort of so important to that full sound.
Yeah.
And I mean, that full sound on Hex is unique because it doesn't sound, no other full album sounds like that.
It doesn't, no. It's weird. I'm not sure it's quite right. Well, right's the wrong word, but it doesn't sound like it should on some of them. Some of the ones that I played on the stage, they're like, it's not like a live recording and it's not like a studio recording. It's a bit odd, isn't it? Well, I mean, deliberately so, I suppose.
Well, it's otherworldly in a lot of respects.
Yeah.
You've got that sort of, you're never quite sure where you are with it. And you're never quite. I mean, I think I said on the thing, it's like being stuck in the smoking compartment for hours on end.
Yeah, you want to try being in the back of a transit van with Mark and Kay and bloody Capstan full strength.
Sure.
It was horrible.
I mean, that intensity, you're sort of left. There's no, even on the jolly numbers, there's still that
there is,
sort of power and also the way that Mark, you said it, writing with one eye to the television, you get Hovis adverts mentioned, and obviously Ted Rogers pops up on the next album and things like that. But you're looking at these sort of strange vignettes of British life.
Yes.
At that time.
Yeah.
And just step sideways. When you think of sending up the culture of celebrity, to be a celebrity, you've got to eat the past these days and things like that. I mean, now, where celebrity has become this whole other thing.
Clever bloke. I mean, Who Makes the Nazis as well was very efficient as well, I think. That whole thing about, when you're out of rocks, give them real soap, where you wouldn't have someone like it, like you'd have someone coming across as your mate, and well, that'd never happen, would it? You never have someone pretending to be your mate down the pub when he's actually espousing quasi-fascist rules.
It won't happen here.
Never happen.
But no, it's true, and that whole, Mark, there's no culture is my brag, the whole thing about the liberals.
Isn't that an amazing first line for an album? There's no culture is my brag.
Yeah.
You're bragging about the fact that there's no culture. I mean, come on. I mean, nobody was writing words like that. And unbelievable, really. I didn't pick up on it at the time, but that's how you're going to open your album. We've got 60 minutes of music here, and by the way, there's no culture involved. There's no such thing. Clever blow.
And considering, rock had started to move into, we'd come out of prog and all that, but there was still that sort of the high-minded concept still going around. And even, you think of bands from that generation. I mean, Pill had become sort of this sort of very art rock thing. New Order were sort of going down the art route before they went dance, and there was this. It was just.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it wasn't as much art as either of those. I think, if you look at it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
But it demanded to be taken on its own terms. I think it wasn't going to be lumped in with anything. There wasn't anything contemporary that he was going to be lumped in with Hex Enduction, which is quite an amazing thing, really.
Sure.
Given the amount of bands there were then, I mean, not like now, but there was a fair few bands going.
Absolutely.
But we weren't like any of them. I mean, deliberately to the point of perversity, not being like, we're going to do whatever it is to not be like you, And the equipment we used was crap, because New Order were getting into synths, and to put New Order on stage in them days cost a fortune, absolute fortune. The kit they were using, even Pill were recording at really expensive studios, but the fall it was too bob, and it always was too bob, and proudly so.
And in that way, the Fall, Dexys were the only other group that ever made me feel that, where there was some affinity between and Kevin.
I mean, of course, as soon as anybody started picking up the first thing Mark was play it down, but I thought there was. I loved Exes anyway.
Yeah.
There was a similar outsider vibe, wasn't there?
No, absolutely, and they're the only groups that ever made me feel sort of guilty for liking other groups.
Yeah.
Because they were, they were so unique.
Yeah.
And I think, Mark credited the Midnight Runners on the press release of Casino Soul and things.
Yeah.
But what amazed me was then the speed with which you moved. You did the Australian tour and then suddenly Room to Live, which was like, again, part of the piece, and you cover it really beautifully in the book. I mean, it was like, again, you say about Mark trying to sort of change things.
Yeah.
It was like, it wasn't broke, but it was time to...
Well, that was the first time for me where I suddenly thought, well, hang on, I'm not sure I agree with this,
Yeah.
Because we did, obviously we all thought Hex was fantastic. We were all really proud of it. And even to the point where Mark was kind of trying to make you feel a bit guilty about being so proud of it. What's the matter with you, soft sod? We did Room to Live, and I've had conversation with all fans, and they always can't quite understand why I've got such a down on it. And Steve's the same, but it was a horrible atmosphere to make something in. So me listening to Room to Live, I have this whole other layer of saying it was horrible. Where you felt guilty about playing on the track because Mark had not sent the van for Craig and Mark Riley, and we were there, me and Steve, and what's going on here? And I want you to play this, and you're thinking, well, hang on, no, this isn't quite right. So the whole atmosphere was horrible, and it was probably, a necessary reset in some ways. Otherwise, one thing Mark never was interested in was making the same album as he made last year.
Sure.
And it could have been if things had carried on. There was like Joker, Hysterical Face.
So Joker is the closest.
Yeah, Solicitor in Studio.
Yeah,
they were kind of like Hexy, but he would have thought to make 6 or 7 songs like that would have been a pointless exercise. It would have just been a coda to Hex, really. Where he was like, no, I'm not doing that again. So it was short, where Hex was long. It was unthought out, where Hex was planned. It was 2 or 3 people on each track, where all of us were on everything on Hex. It was deliberately from start to finish the opposite of Hex, really. Which kind of makes it a good companion piece, really. Which is why that 1982 thing.
Sure.
If you look at it as a piece, which you've done on this compilation.
Yeah.
It looks clever, and the whole is more than the sum of the parts, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
You take Room to Live out on its own, and it's. But if you take it as a year-long project, it's quite clever, really.
Sure. And I mean, it was, Papal Visit and things like that. It was going back to those.
Never heard of
you still never.
Never heard it. I talked about that in the other one. I took a vow that I was never going to listen to it, and I've never heard it.
Right.
And he said that we're doing this track, just me and Carl and me on the violin. Sod that, I'm never listening to that. And I never have listened to it. It got to. I mean, she probably should have done really by now, but if not for research,
I can say perhaps you should play it.
No, you're all right. I'd have to leave. I'd have to leave you to put it on. I've made a vow. I've never heard it.
Right. Wow. That's
I don't think I'm missing much, to be honest.
What do you think? Oh, the thumb up in the back there.
Thumb up, is that thumb up because you agree, or thumb up because it's a great track?
What you said.
Oh, no.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
You could stay.
So, just let's go out to Australia briefly, and obviously you were fated over there, and New Zealand you were loved.
New Zealand, we were quite the big act, I think, in New Zealand. We were in the charts.
Happy for guitarists.
Yeah, it's great. It's great because there's a whole series of pictures, and it's basically we all came out all knackered and jet lagged, and the press were there. Paparazzi, for want of a better word. You don't look very happy. So then we all had to go back in and come back out again dead happy. So that's what all those photographs are. All those coming up with hey, and they're all chatting, and Mark Lutz swinging his very, very crappy luggage.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him when the book came out. I said, those were the tightest pants I've ever seen in my life. I don't know if you've seen the picture of Mark before. He said, yeah, they were Tracy's, his wife's.
Right.
She took them in, she couldn't get them on, and I was that short of clothes when I went to Australia. He nicked them. So they looked like he's wearing tights at that time. We didn't have a lot of money in them days, but they were all posed, all those photographs.
Yeah. So
we weren't really happy.
No, I sort of guessed that, but the famous punch up on the dance floor, which was early on. Was it Rock the Casbah?
It was Rock the Casbah.
It was Rock the Casbah. That's fine, because I've seen different sort of things.
Mark said it was Black Sabbath or something. Or Deep Purple.
Deep Purple.
No way we were getting up to Deep Purple. Not a chance.
Yeah.
No, it was definitely Rock the Casbah.
And the rift between the two Marks, I mean, was that very evident on that tour?
It was, yeah. I mean, there was a bit of a rift between Mark and everyone else, really. He had a few arguments with Kay. It was just one of them things. It was just... long tours do that, you know. People,
Yeah, yeah.
everything, you know. I hate the way he eats crisps, you know. You get to 6 weeks into a tour, and does he have to comb his hair like that? You know, everything just annoys you, you know. So it would have. I don't think it could have not been a big deal at all.
Yeah.
But I think Mark chose to make it a big deal because he wanted to get rid of Mark Riley. I think so. So you know, everyone's a bit fractious, but he slapped everyone on the dance floor, and me, Steve, and Craig just stood there like, and Mark just went. And then it was, I'm being attacked, you know. But he's fat people. That's what you're going to get, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And so that when Mark Riley went in December,
yeah.
I mean, were you surprised? Were you relieved? What was
my main big feeling for it for years after was guilt, really. I felt really guilty that me, Stephen Craig, didn't say, right, well, you can't sack him. We're all going. But yeah, Mark had the conversation, and Mark said, no, I'm not going to be responsible for 4 people being out of work. No way. He'd probably become untenable anyway. And he would have felt really bad if we'd have gone out because if Mark would have done it, I think, if we'd have said, well, if Mark goes, we all go, and he said, right, well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Well, I would have thought. But so Mark didn't want to be responsible for that. But I did feel tremendously guilty about it.
Yeah.
And it did affect our relationship because Mark's nearly as much a brother as Steve or
sure.
the other 2 brothers. I've known Mark all. His parents are my godparents.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've grown up with him, you know. And it got a bit sticky for maybe not long, but it wasn't nice. It was another not nice thing, really, you know. But one of them things. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Oh no, indeed. But I mean, I think at the time. And if you were, you know, a fan, as indeed I was, and looking at the press and everything, it was like. Jesus, you know, the 2 Marks in the band, you know, the planets are going to go out of line and everything. Well, you look, it's, you know, a guitarist leaves a band, so what? But hey, we wouldn't be here if it was
That's right,
so what. And then obviously after that, there was all that, you know, Mark doing Hey Mark Riley and stuff like that. And
he didn't do it on his own, did he? Somebody played the drums on it.
Yeah.
Shocking, really. Can't believe I did it. But there you go. Again, it's not in the grand scheme of things. But he did get Mark Riley as a gunslinger, and it was his handbags on it really.
It was all there, wasn't it? Yeah. And the great tradition of like Lennon and McCartney or whatever.
How do you sleep? That's a shocker, that, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Whenever you hear it,
it's just it's butter clenching. I mean, I can understand him doing it.
Yeah.
Pissed in the studio, but to put it out as oh man, that's even worse than Mark Riley. That's shocking, that isn't it?
But at least Mark Riley is fun. I mean, I suppose that's just. Bitter.
It's bitter, and it's a great tune as well.
Isn't it?
Why don't you write some decent lyrics, John? You know?
Yeah.
But anyway,
we digress.
Yeah.
That's for another panel. Yeah. So we'll throw it open to the floor here.
This is always hard
in a second, but it really is. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and believe you me, I've read a few full books in my time, and I just think the way you have brought together so many different voices, and you got obviously. You know, Mark stuff on record.
Yeah.
But did you go? What did you do? Did you approach every sort of living member and say?
Yeah, I did. Mark and Steve, I see fairly Steve I see very regularly. What with him being my brother and all, but Mark I see quite a lot of. But Craig I don't see so much. And I asked him, and he said he'd do it for me, not because I'm a great writer, but just because we're friends, you know.
Yeah.
He doesn't do a lot, Craig, you know. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, and he was even in the Fallen, he's kind of reluctant presence, you know.
Sure.
But he was gracious enough because of our history and being friends, he'd be interviewed, and that was great. I was really honoured by that, because Craig's got a great take on the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk about it enough. He doesn't do enough for me, Craig. Craig, you know, brilliant songwriter, great guitarist, and he should be.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, if me and Steve can be out in a band playing stuff now, Craig's got more talent in his little finger than the pair of us put together, I think. And it's a real shame he doesn't do it, I think.
Sure. No, I mean, one of the great...
You don't have to agree with that, by the way.
Guitarist. No, I think you have a phenomenal amount of talent, Paul, and your brother as well. I love you both. But I love that thing where you're talking about the... I mean, I just opened it there because, you know, Craig talking about writing the classical, and he was dead proud of it. He was basically conducting the lot of you in rehearsal. I told you to keep the beat and be Ringo, and Carl to be the heavy metal monster and do the fills.
Yeah.
I only gave Mark the Never Felt Better in My Life tune, and he wasn't going to just stand there for 5 minutes, so he made up the whole discordant.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Steve says Craig didn't write it at all. He certainly didn't write the bass solo at the end. John Taylor wrote that for Planet Earth.
He did, yeah.
So, and it is, when you hear it...
Yeah, it's very reminiscent, shall we say. It's an homage.
An homage
to Planet Earth by
dear John Taylor.
Which is quite ironic, really. He wasn't the biggest fan of New Romantics.
No, he kill it, as he says.
I always liked John. I've always been a bit of a fan of John. But there you go. That's a tale for another day.
No. Lovely people, by and large. So, ladies and gentlemen, Have a Bleedin Guess is out now on the fabulous Root Publishing by these fabulous people down here, and is available to sign by the man himself afterwards. But now, do we have the roving microphone?
Sorry, I missed the first half, so I hope you haven't asked this question. We were discussing this earlier.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm wondering, the fall had, to be euphemistic about it, there was a terrible amount of churn in terms of band members in the fall. Did you, because it kind of struck me a bit like an abusive relationship, did you think going in there that you would be the person that would change Mark and would stay, or did you go in there knowing eventually I'm going to be kicked out like everyone else?
I don't know, I think certainly when I joined the fall that wasn't really the case. There was, I mean, I know it looks like it was because the people on the second album were pretty much or 90% different. But it wasn't an open door policy by any means. When I joined the fall, it was you were in the fall. I had no reason to think that I was first out the door. And as I say, when they went to America and got Carlin, I didn't think, perhaps naively, that there was any plans to get rid of me. And I think there's a bit of not an urban myth, but I think that's kind of exaggerated, that open door thing. If you look at core membership, really, I mean, if you look at Craig and Steve were in the band for years and years, and Simon was in the band for years and years as well. Carl was in and out, obviously, but there was people coming in and out on the periphery. You know, there was the day Bushes came in for a bit, Bricks was in for quite a while, but so I don't think it felt that way on the inside, really, that it was an open door and you might turn up on Monday morning and it wasn't a 0 hours contract, you were in the band. It might have got that way later on, I don't know. I mean, after 98 I've got no handle on how things worked in the fall at all. But Steve, look at Steve was in there for what, 20 years, 21 years or whatever. There was certainly no thing that, you know, he could be replaced at a stroke. No, I think that's an outside looking in perspective of the fall, I think. That it was an open door policy.
You already touched on it, but is the Motown story actually true, to the best of your knowledge?
I think true is it's what happened was there was Motown was starting a sort of subsidiarily, a sort of an independent label funded by Motown, and they had a couple of AR people in London, and one of them was a bit interested in the fall. He was a bit of an indie guy that got in, and he listened to the fall, and it never happened. I don't think it was ever going to happen because we were in the process of signing to Beggar's Banquet at the time. So I think Mark's great skill was he took that and he built a narrative. That's what Mark did. So when you went to interview Mark, you just switched your tape recorder on, asked him one question, and he was off, and he'd give you fantastic, really, because you know you go and you listen to interviews with a lot of bands, and we like this album, you know, this is our new single. But Mark was an interesting guy to interview, and it was a legend built around the basis of a fact. There was a kernel of truth in it that Motown did want to listen to us, but it was never sent back to Berry Gordy and he put the classical on in his boardroom. What the hell's this? That never happened. I'm pretty sure if you ask Berry Gordy now, he's never heard of the fall. So
Hello, there's a question from behind.
Is that alright?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Of course it's alright.
You got a mic?
I do now. Hello, it feels really weird being right next to
That's alright.
Michael Clark
Yeah.
famously set ballets to your music. I was just wondering if I could get your take on it, and also I think Lee Bowery did the sort of costumes for them.
Yeah, Michael Clark. One of the last things I did was with Michael Clark. We did the Old Grey Whistle test. He was a big fan of the fall. He was a really nice guy, Michael Clark. Really, I mean, obviously, a really clever guy. But he did this. We did. What song was it? Can't think.
Lay of the Land.
Yeah.
There you go, Lay of the Land.
Sorry,
we did that for the
fine.
Old Grey Whistle test, and it was really funny actually. He did this. I mean, he's a proper ballet dancer, you know. And wow, we're going to have a ballet dancer. That's really, really class. And he came in, he had a pantomime cow and no arse in his trousers. But so that was when the relationship started. Because they were great mates, Mark and Michael Clark, for years and years, you know, for a long, long time. and they did the I Am Curious Orange, which is amazing ballet. I mean, I never got to see it myself, but obviously I've seen bits of it on film and things, but that was fantastic. Steve always says that was his favourite time in the fall when they were doing that ballet, because even Mark, it's not like doing a gig. You do a ballet, you turn up at, it starts at 7:30. You've got to be in the building by 7:05. You've got to be on stage by this time, and it's dead regimented. You can't deviate, and everybody was really professional, and obviously the end product was amazing. So I think that was Steve's take on it. That was the best thing he ever did with the fall. I think I Am Curious Orange. So yeah, I was a fan of Michael Clark's, but we went to see. He did one. We went to see him. And we went to see him at the Royal Northern College of Music, and this was after I was at the fall, and he came out, and I was courting my wife at the time, and I said the bloke who's choreographer is going to come out and meet us, and he did, so I've got that, if nothing else. And she married me, so there you go.
About 4, maybe 5 years ago, I was at a similar thing in Rochdale with Steve, talking about the big win midweek,
Yeah.
and he said that after he left the band, he couldn't listen to the music for years and years. Did you have a similar experience?
No, I mean, because the experience of me leaving the fall was completely different. I wasn't bitter about the fall at all. I left the fall still loving the fall. I left the fall because I was going to be a big rock star, and me and my friends were going to form a pop band, and it was going to be about me as much as anything. Because obviously, whatever the fall was, it wasn't really about me, and that's clear, isn't it? So me and my friends, who happened to be in the Creepers with Mark Riley, we were going to decide we were going to form a pop band, and we were going to be massive. And it was all going to be about the three of us, really. We were all going to be apart, and then we did absolutely nothing. So that'll tell you. So we bombed. We completely and utterly bombed. It didn't out. So we did one single, actually. We had a cover of Jeepster, which was pretty shite, to be honest. But,
What were you called?
we were called Shout by My Lamb.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's on my Christmas card list. Of course it is. No, we did nothing. And Mark said, when I went to Mark and said I'd like to leave the band because I'd like to do a band that was really about me as much as anybody else, and he said, well, I think you're insane, and he was proved right. So there you go. So.
Hi, I was wondering if you could remember what the first song from Hex Induction Hour that you played live.
It was Draw One on the Air Rifle. It was the first one we played live. We've been playing that for 2 years before we recorded it, which is one of the things I say in the book. We recorded 2 albums, a single, and he kept it back all that time, and it fits onto Hex Induction Hour really well. So he obviously knew what he was doing. I didn't, but he did. So that was the oldest one.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you only buy one full
You
book...
got your hand up, you're just holding the curtains.
You and the curtain. I know a man holding the curtain when I see one. If you only buy one full book before 6 o'clock this afternoon, make sure it's Paul's. Have a Bleedin Guess is out on Root Publishing, and it really is. If I'm sure a lot of people in this room have read many full books. Some maybe have even written them, but this is absolutely great. For me, as someone who, when I was 16, Hex Induction Hour blew my mind many times. To be here with the drummer is such a thrill. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give it a huge round of the words here for Paul Hanley. Thank you all. Hopefully see you next year. Thank you.